hearing. And I feel it necessary to recuse myself. First and foremost, this is a direct neighbor of mine. Second, I am a commissioner in Lakeview, a management district, which has hired counsel for this rezone. According to procedure, at this time, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Sue Cousing to chair rezone hearing, and I will resume my position as chair after next rezone. Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to B1, public hearing, West Rod Cottage Industries. Public hearing has already been, but now it's West Rod Cottage Industries. John Strauss, owner, where this is for discussion for the board.
Madam Chair, if I could, just as an introductory comment to the next two items. Last month, there was some discussion that you wanted Act 67 brought back so you could have it in front of you, which it is at your desks. The one thing I would remind everybody, and I should have said it last month, both of these are rezones. So Act 67 specifically deals with conditional uses. So we don't follow the same criteria on Act 67. With that being said, on both of these, it's very important to substantiate your decision, whatever it is, approval or denial, whatever you choose to do. Especially in these, make sure that you're voicing your opinion, why you're voting the way you are, but you're not boxed in, I guess, by Act 67 on a rezone. So I just wanted to put that out there on the front end. It's still good to think at that high level, that high standard, but that's not, you're not bound by Act 67.
And I think we asked to have this drone, so I guess who's ever handling that? Kate?
Yep, you guys asked for a few different things, so I'm gonna first start with the C2 zoning district requirements. You guys asked that this be put directly into the packet. C2 is our Upland Resource Conservation District. This is the description of C2. It includes principal uses, accessory uses, and then quite a few conditional uses. And then after that is the minimum lot width, building height, yard setbacks from rear, side, and street for the C2 zone district. And then,
Excuse me, Kate, could you go back to the top, please?
all the way.
I guess the thing I'm concerned about is the primary purpose of this district is to preserve, protect, enhance, and restore all significant woodlands, related scenic areas, submarginal farmland.
Can you get closer to your mic?
Does this, I guess, this is something I think we need to consider when we make our decision. Is this an appropriate zoning district?
This is what, did you say, Jim?
Is this an appropriate zoning district for what we're looking at? Looking at this introductory paragraph of what C2 zoning is. What the purpose is.
I'll recognize Joanne and then we'll get back to Kate.
If you scroll down further, it is listed, harbors are listed, if I remember correctly, when I read through the packet, yachting clubs and marinas.
Again, as a conditional use, not as principal use.
Okay, did someone else have something before we go back to Kate?
Does
Mr.
that-
Conkey, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I think I feel obligated to say that that's a great premise or a great preface to this discussion. From a staff perspective, that's really the decision for the body to make. So it's not something that we can help explain why a substandard lot would be eligible, I guess, for lack of a better word, to a different zoning district. We can talk about that. But as far as the the purpose and intent that really goes to what the county zoning agency is, that's your duty to vote on. So it's not, I just want to be clear that you're not waiting for Kate to say yes or no, or me to say yes or no, it's really up to you.
Okay, Joanne?
So because it's a conditional use, does that mean they need to go through the conditional use?
Well, this is a rezone.
This is a
Purely.
rezone. Purely a rezone. There's no conditional use at this.
Right, I remember that, so, but he wants to park boats there.
And that's the really tough part about this one, because it was split from, the conditional use and the rezone aren't together. So that's,
So we can't consider
correct.
any of that. We only can consider what's in front of us tonight.
Which is the rezone.
The rezone, yes.
Okay, so how is this not to be conserved? I'm confused as to why,
Well, this is very
There's a
unusual. Usually they'll
question.
bring them both at the same time. For some reason, their village, township, whatever it's in, has broken this off and we're just doing this tonight.
right, I know, but like, in respect to what Mr. Van Drieser is saying, I'm wondering, how does this not relate to conservation area? Because he's, as I understand it, he doesn't do anything with this property other than park some cars and have some boats line up to it, correct?
Yeah, it's really tough in this instance because,
So, but wouldn't that be conservation, is all I'm asking?
well, maybe I'll try it another way, is that C2, the part that we have up on the screen now is the purpose of the district, but then many other uses in C2 are very wide ranging. There's a number of conditional uses that kind of swing the spectrum of what's allowed in C2.
So even though it's, the primary purpose is to preserve, protect, enhance, and restore all significant woodlands, related scenic areas, submarginal farmlands, other farmland, blah, 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 that doesn't mean it's the only thing that can be considered a
I think that's
C2
fair.
zone property. Okay, I just need to understand this in my
But
mind.
it is the primary purpose.
Also fair. I mean, this is,
Yeah. Okay.
and you're stuck because you've heard a little bit about what a conditional use might be applied for, and I think will be applied for, but we don't have it in front of us. And or in front of you, that's really tough. I don't know how else to say it.
Okay, is there anything else before we move back to Kate? Okay,
So then the second item that you guys requested was information from the town of East Troy about what they received for this application. They gave me the entire packet. It's about 61 pages long, and it was their town plan commission and town board decision letters, as well as the application that was submitted to the plan commission and town board. And I compared it to what was submitted to you guys, and it's all the same. And if there's anything.
any questions on that?
I need to highlight that because that was commented to me by other folks that it wasn't the same, and Kate went through it. I don't know how else to say it, but I just need to highlight that because that's been a concern that they weren't the same, but Kate.
What wasn't the same?
That what was submitted here was different than what was submitted at there.
And they were the same, just to be really crystal clear.
Okay, thank you. What the applicant submitted.
Correct.
If there's no further questions on what the town gave us, I'll move on to the drone footage. There's a tiny little red spot in the middle of your screen. I should probably narrate this.
So that clear area there is what we're talking about, Katie?
Yes, yep, so this whole area, the parking being back here to the left, and this is the site as is, and what they're requesting to rezone from C4 to C2.
Can you pause it right there, Dave?
Susan?
There's another misconception, just one thing to clear up is it's not the entire site that's being proposed to rezone to C2, correct, Kate?
Right.
So I think later in the footage, there's an overlay, or I'm confused?
I think it's the other drone.
Okay, so could you just roughly show the part, like, with
Yep.
the cursor, like,
So where the wetland delineation occurred is over here, and it kind of pretty much follows the edge of the water. It may be a couple of feet off into the grass area, which would be better to see on the site plan with the delineation itself. But this is pretty much where it runs, and nothing is being changed or proposed to be changed in this area at this moment. And this area is staying C4. Everything else to the left will be rezoned to C2 if approved.
thanks. Joanne had one. Okay, Madam
Well,
Chair.
now I have two questions.
Okay, so can
Hold
you
it.
stop a minute, Katie?
Yep.
Okay, Joanne.
So, on the left side of the road is connected to the major body of water, and if they park on the right side of the road, their boats, they have to be able to fit inside the culvert. Correct? This was in our
What are you
packet,
talking about?
which is why I'm
Boats or cars, or what are you talking about?
boats, you know, the pictures they show us on pages, they weren't numbered, but they showed us pictures of people having to ride their boats through that culvert in order to park on the other side of the road with their boats if they're not allowed to put their boats on this side.
Right, that was just given as part of the whole packet when they applied. So it may be more in reference to the conditional use, but yeah, there is that culvert there
I'm
that
just trying to understand the part.
boats would have to pass it.
And then now my question is, if that's wetland, still wetland, why does he need it to be C2 if he's not even changing the shoreline?
The whole thing right now is zone C4. The entire parcel.
Right, so what does rezoning the inland part do to help him?
Because the delineation says where the C4, I don't know if you wanna take a stab at this.
Sure, yeah, so when we get a wetland delineation done, the DNR, I shouldn't say requires, they want that zone district to match their wetland delineation boundary, because we have a zone district for C4, we need to make sure that our maps are accurately, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, so we're trying to correct our zone district to match the DNR wetland delineation.
Okay.
And what the upland portion goes to is ultimately up to the property owner.
Well, ultimately up to the property owner can apply, then it's up to you and the county board to rezone.
So he has to get the shoreline rezoned if he
Nope.
wants?
Shoreline stay in
No,
C4,
C4.
regardless of what happens. That was a misconception, I think, that the applicant was trying to change the entire parcel, but that's not the case. There you go, Kate, that helps, I think.
And then, here, I'll zoom into the wetland delineation. This
So does
area
he-
here is,
Put on your mic.
this area here is the wetland delineation line, so as you can see, it's a little hatched. So it kind of follows the shoreline all the way over to here. This is where those two piers are in the drone footage. This is kind of backwards right now, north is to your right, but, and then it ends over here. So everything from this point into the water is C4. It should be C4. Right now, the whole parcel's C4.
That's not gonna be affected, Joanne, that's gonna remain.
Yep.
We're not talking about that area,
Correct.
it's the area back of that.
Yep.
It's very
Everything-
difficult,
I
good
still don't
questions.
understand why we're here. I need to know why. What is going on
The
here?
whole thing is zone C4 right now.
Whole thing is, we have to match what the,
You just wanna line up the maps of
Well-
wetland.
The applicant wants to do something different on this parcel, and in order to do that, the applicant wants to change the upland portion beyond the wetland to something different. And then the zone district he picked has a number of conditional uses. So he would like that zone district because that would allow the possibility to apply for a conditional use. And that would be, that's up to you as a body.
But we're supposed to pretend that's not gonna happen.
That's what the
we're not
difficult,
talking about that.
the difficult part is that he's applied for that, he's applied for a conditional use, but the town split the decision of the conditional use and the rezone. So right now in front of you, the only thing you have is the rezone. So anything we talk about a potential conditional use is irrelevant because you haven't heard it yet.
That's
That-
gonna come back again.
Correct, depending on what happens here. You could pick a different zone district, you could deny it, you could approve it, and then we would hear it soon.
Continuing on, I think we'll get several different views here. Right now, we're focusing on the south side, and now we are panning away. So that gravel area has been there for a while, but there's a little line here, and it kind of helps visualize where the wetland is. It's not entirely accurate. I'm not sure what created that line, but that's kind of where the C4 is. Everything north of that, he's requesting for C2. There's that little line again I mentioned. Again, it's not exactly perfect with the wetland delineation that you saw on the site plan. And as you can see, this is mostly grassy area.
Kate, that's the drone just flying low, or is that?
Yeah, yep.
Yes.
Pretty soon it'll be over top of the water and it'll look like someone's just standing out there with a video camera. So obviously it's really hard to tell where the wetland starts and stops. That was kind of the whole purpose of getting a wetland delineation done. To show that this parcel isn't actually all wetland.
I didn't really grasp what you just said. It was kind of like,
Sorry.
what did you just say?
I said it's hard to tell where the wetland starts and stops on the property,
Okay,
which is kind of the whole point of getting a wetland delineation done to
Okay.
determine.
thank you. That's what I thought you said, but
Yep.
you kind of
Sorry.
speak close to your microphone when you talk.
Yep.
Mr. Van Drieser.
I have a question. So this is like 0.32 acres, is that correct? Yep. Are there any zoning districts this even meets the requirements of any zoning district?
In anticipation of that question, I think Nick is ready to answer that one.
No, there's not. This would be an existing substandard sized parcel. It's just a parcel that exists prior to the adoption of the ordinance.
Was it an oversight that was done that way?
I think we end up with an irregular shaped and sized piece of property here because of the lake and the angle of the road and how land was kind of divided in mass with section lines and quarter section lines and things like that. And this map this north-south line on the east side of the property, I think it was basically just established years ago as like a quarter section line. And then we've got the road at this diagonal, and we got the lake on the south end. And this is just a piece of land that was left, you know, when you start putting all those pieces together. So we have lots like this all over the county. A lot of our lots existed prior to the zoning ordinance in the 70s, and there's not a rural zoning district that allows lots this size anymore.
As an extent, if I could, just a quick extension of that. So there's, just to repeat, there's a conception out there because it's so small and the requirements for C2 are so vast, so large, that this should never happen as a C2 rezone. I think that's fair, I think that's something that's been put out there. Do you wanna just touch on that for a second?
Misconception, correct,
I just want Nick to
yes.
to talk about that for a second.
Well, I think that's something that the board could take into consideration when they're trying to decide, you know, as far as the appropriateness of the zone district that this parcel is put in, if size or width or, is, you know, if the lot was 9/10 of an acre and there was a zone district that allowed 1 acre, and you would say, well, we think that district is more appropriate because it's at least really, really close. But then maybe that zone district is, you know, the amusement park zone district, and you say, well, for that reason, it's not. This one's more appropriate even though it allows 5 acres. So it's kind of a balancing act of what the zone district is, what this land is, and size. You know, those are all variables, I think.
I guess another way I should have put it, it isn't an outright block from the start.
No,
Right.
no.
Okay, questions, Mr. Van Duzer?
Do you know offhand, if we were to approve it at C2 with setbacks or anything, could they build on that? Or is it, do you know offhand?
So substandard sized lots have, reduced setbacks regardless of what they're zoned. It just breaks it down into sewered or unsewered if it's a substandard sized lot. And, the setbacks are reduced to 25 feet from a road right of way, 25 feet from a rear lot line, and then 75 feet from the water.
It seems like, it doesn't seem right to zone it C2, but it doesn't seem like there's a better zoning district,
No.
more suitable one.
Questions or comments?
No, it's kind of cut and dry to me, but again, it's controversial, but I guess I'd like to make a motion that we approve it to C2.
Is there a second? Ms. Laufenberg? It was,
You can have it.
did you get that? Dennis
I'll
and
second it.
Joanne was seconded. Discussion?
If you could, have a little more discussion on the why of it. You touched on it a
Dennis?
little bit, but
I just think we should allow him to do what he wants to do on his property. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's not gonna take away from the C4 at all. And personally, I think that probably when this was done way back when, it was an oversight. I mean, nobody probably ever thought that this small piece of property was ever gonna be anything. Again, I can't look into the future, I'm not gonna try to look into the future, and I'm not gonna try to figure out what the other people thought. I just think for right now, if this man can do something with his property, C2, again, what he's gonna do with it, or what he proposes he's gonna do with it, doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna pass. And so therefore, again, I'd say let it go and see what the future brings.
Mr. Kuki?
Now that the applicant requested this and the wetlands has been delineated, this is correcting a zoning district that is incorrect. And all we're doing is correcting
Yep.
a wrong district.
It's been said here many times,
Yeah.
this month and last month.
I
By
think
staff.
you could add that it's C2 on the neighboring property, and it is probably as suitable for C2 as it is for any district. So to me, it's, you know, I don't think they have any other options.
All right, those were some good statements, and I think if there's no more discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Only.